Welcome to Keep the Line Moving, the podcast where leadership meets life and inspiration. Here we spotlight extraordinary leaders. We're diving deep into how they inspire, motivate, and lead with strategy and empathy to achieve the extraordinary. Here we go. Episode 116, and our topic today, listful thinking, with our guest, Paula Rizzo. That is the title of one of her two books, Listful Thinking, Using Lists to be More Productive, Highly Successful, and Less Stressed. And her second book, Listful Living, a list-making journey to a less stressed you. She's a best-selling author and Emmy Award-winning television producer for nearly 20 years. She's now a media strategist, maximizing exposure through compelling content. Her services are on-camera media training, media pitch and story development consulting, video series development consulting, and pitch like a producer workshop. She has so much valuable wisdom to share with us, and it begins right now on Keep the Line Moving with Paula Rizzo. So Paula, tell us, you and I have a similar background, but the folks know my background. Let's talk about yours. When you got out of Hofstra, where did you go? What did you do? And fill in the blanks, please.
Well, I got the best advice ever when I was at Hofstra University from a former television producer who was my favorite professor ever, Kathy Crean. She said, you need to start doing the thing you want to do now. Get your foot in the door, do an internship. I mean, that was like before people were doing internships. You had to do an internship, right? So she said, get your foot in the door, do something. So she hooked me up with a local TV station on Long Island, TV 55. So I would do school in the morning, and then I would go right for the 11 p.m. newscast in the afternoon. So I had one foot in at all times, which I think was like the best thing ever because I was able to really jump in, be a part of it. And then my career just went from there.
Okay, so you're in New York City or, thereabouts in Long Island, right? And you're learning how to do the ins and outs of TV producing. Take us from there, Paula, because I could go through your resume, WLNY, WPIX, WCBS, but how did you ascend? What were the qualities that you displayed? Do you think, because we never know, what people see in us, but what were the qualities that you saw in yourself that was allowing you, hey, I'm getting success here early?
I was always a little afraid to jump, I have to say. I was always like, I feel good. This feels good. This is not easy, but I feel like it's, my familiar ground. As soon as I got good, you get a little uncomfortable and then an opportunity would pop up, so that's what happened. The next thing was WPIX was looking for a writer at the time and it was a freelance job. So it was not full-time. There were no benefits. It was not, it was just like you show up when they needed you. And I was like, but I already have a full-time job with benefits. And why would I do that? And my husband, who was the sports guy, actually, he was the sports reporter. He said, you have to do it. You have to try. You have to get to the next level. And so he was the one who really was like, I think you could do it. Why don't you just try? And I got that job. And then I got the next one. And I got the next one, so it was really having your eye on the next rung almost in a way, but being a little afraid and doing it anyway.
But you weren't just good at the job and the nuts and bolts per se of the job itself. There was some intangibles that you displayed, including, Paula, I can assume, when you interviewed with news directors or executive producers, whomever hired you in the track, right, to where you got in eventually in TV news. What do you think it was? We shine the light on people, Paula, here. We have a lot of people that listen are really aspiring leaders, aspiring professionals. What do you think it was about you, the way you interviewed or presented yourself to get further jobs?
I always wanted to try. I always said, yes, I'll try that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I was the one who raised my hand and said, oh, okay, I'll take that story. Or, oh, okay, let me do the interview or let me see. Or, I always wanted to try, to see. Maybe I hated it at the end of the day. I was like, it wasn't for me, but I would have tried it, and I was a go-getter. I was there. I was organized, of course. I think that was also a big part of it is that, I had my list and you have to be organized, if you're working in television news, especially. A day is happening with or without you, that newscast is getting on the air or not, and I think I was always there too when things went wrong. I mean, it was kind of like good timing for me. Somebody called out sick or I just happened to be there the day when the breaking news happened. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go put me in the control room and I'll figure it out, So to be a team player, I think was a big deal too.
And dealing with adversity, right? And dealing with, things aren't going well. You seem to have a level set a demeanor that is
Yeah.
perfect for a TV newsroom. Do you think that had something to do with it? Hey, I have gumption and I also have some calmness when dealing with breaking news, or when the teleprompter breaks, or the camera falls over.
And it will happen. And all of the above has happened, right? Like that's just what you have to be ready for, things to go wrong. That's what when it goes right, you're like, huh, that was weird, you never know. But yeah, it's funny. People would say to me in the control room when I would leave the control room, they'd say, "You're so calm in the control room. I've never really seen a producer be so calm, doing a lot." And it's like, yeah, but you don't know the flips and turns my stomach is making right now. I can maintain this on the outside, but it really, I'm feeling it on the inside too. So, but some of the best producers that I've worked with were so calm, cool, and collected. So I really learned from them, and being fast on your feet, thinking quickly, all of those things, I think really helped.
Do you think calmness is an innate part of us, or do you think you can learn to be calm?
You can learn it, definitely. I feel like I have worked a lot to be less stressed. I mean, it's a very stressful environment, and if you let yourself take in all of that crazy energy that a newsroom is, that breaking news is, that day-to-day newscast, I mean, this is why people get ulcers, truly, and I saw that happen with a lot of the people that I worked with, people who had been in the business for a long time. I could see like the health was not so great. And so I thought, well, I have to be able to do it a different way. And so I really learned from other people who were able to keep it calm.
So you got all the way, Paula, in 2010 to Fox News, 2010 to 2017, producing. You were the senior health producer. Take us through that experience, because that's at the top. Though that's one of the top networks, in American journalism right now.
Yes, it was exciting. It was a great team. I was lucky because we worked at the time for .com, and it was fresh and new. And it was a little bit difficult because sometimes people didn't want to be on the .com; they wanted to be on the channel, And so it was a little hard to book people, and we had to convince them that no, wait, if it's on the internet, it's even better because you can watch it at any time. You don't have to just catch it at that certain moment when it's on television. So once we sort of convinced people, it started to work out. But we would produce these segments for affiliates, for the web, for the channel. And we became sort of like this little engine of health news, which was really fun to sort of have our own thing. And I worked with some great producers and reporters and editors through the years, and did some really fun stories. I have to say, that was the most fun that I had, because it wasn't day-to-day news anymore. It was much more being able to tell stories that were a little bit longer, to go somewhere, to travel, to find that human interest story, or do something that was going to benefit me, honestly, where I learned a lot of these calming techniques and how to do yoga and how to drink green tea, all these things that now I find myself using. It really set me up for success for the next part of my career too.
And so that's great that it helped you. But you also, I've done research on you, and you said publicly in podcasts, or I don't remember where I saw it specifically, but you also liked producing content that helped people. And was that foreshadowing, do you think, for your entrepreneurial career? Did you connect the two? Have you connected those dots? And I don't want to assume, but maybe I'm onto something.
For sure. I like it. I like the way you think. It's true.
Thank you.
I mean, doing day-to-day news, like exciting, important, I always say, news is a public service. It's something that we need, that people need to be able to know what's going on in their world. Very important. But it gets tiring from the perspective of like, oh gosh, we got another fire, we got another, and you get desensitized. And it becomes that, oh, we got a good story. And the good story is that 3 people are dead somewhere, That's terrible. But that's what the reality of television news is. It really like warps your perception. So to be able to then do stories about a new hip replacement, a new surgery, a new thing that could really help people, do these exercises and you'll be able to sleep better. Like to really improve people's lives in a different way, right? I want people to be safe and know and watch their local news and see what's going on from day to day, for sure. But at the same time, it was really nice to then be able to move away from that and do other stories that were uplifting, and be able to really help people and to help myself too. I'm being a little bit funny about it, but it's true. It really puts you in a better mindset to be able to share those type of stories as well.
And imagine that, Paula, going to work and getting benefits, right? Like
Yeah.
intrinsic benefits from your work, and you're helping people. That's a win-win. Paula, to your point about the newsroom and, bad news leading per se, I remember being in a newsroom coming up in the business, and somebody said, "Oh, the producer yelled out, 'Oh, we got a lead.'" And it was a car accident or something. I'm thinking to myself, thank goodness I'm writing about scores and
Right.
touchdowns and not that. And so, with all due respect to the news, that just wasn't, that part of my personality did not jive. Okay, Paula. So in 2017 or thereabouts, you make a transition. What triggered that? What was the catalyst moment? Was it an aha moment, or perhaps something in your life? Or tell us, please, if you could, into becoming an entrepreneur.
It was sort of a slow burn, I have to say.
Ah,
I
got it.
like to prepare. I don't like to jump and do anything. I like to know, I'm a future thinker. So even, when as a producer, right, you have to see what's next. You're always looking at what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What if this goes wrong? What can I go to next? What else do I have, right? This live shot goes down. What's my next option? So that's sort of how I always like think about things. And that's how I also thought about this entrepreneurial thing. So I sort of, put a toe out there. I had written my first book, Listful Thinking, while I was working as full time at Fox. And it was a great experience. But I sort of felt like the things I wanted to do, the speaking, the coaching, all of those things, it was almost like the thing that had nourished me for so long, television news, right, was now holding me back. And I wasn't able to take some of those opportunities. I wasn't able to do some of the things that I wanted to do. Even coaching. If I was able to see, it always broke my heart when I had an expert. Mostly, I would say it was authors. I always had like a soft spot for authors. An author who would pitch us, and they just weren't ready for TV. And it was just a no. Sorry, can't help you. Move on. I find somebody else. And so that always broke my heart because it was one of those things where somebody who had just like sat with them for a little while and just they would be a little bit better, maybe they would get that opportunity, right? And so I saw that there was an opportunity, but I couldn't fill it at the time. And it always like was in the back of my head. What could I do with the skills that I have to help people to be able to lift people up? And so it was a multi thing, right? It was like the book had come out. I had sort of tasted my own little entrepreneur world through that. I saw that there was sort of a need. I knew I had some skills. And so I dipped a toe out there and I started doing a little bit of like speaking and those types of things. And as things happen in news, my entire team changed. My boss changed. They weren't going to, I wasn't going to do health news anymore. I was going to do all the news. And I said, no, no, no. I've been here for almost over a decade doing what I do. This isn't going to work for me anymore. And so I said, you know what? This is the time.
Okay, so you just give me so many places we could jump off, but I want to go back to that nugget that you said in the middle there. When you have an author or somebody who has a product, right? And they were not able to communicate clearly the ideas in the book about themselves, fill in the blank, right? They just weren't able to communicate. How would you have that conversation? What if they said, "Why, Paula? I wrote this wonderful book. There's a New York Times bestseller. I'm making thousands of dollars a week. Why can't I go on your channel?"
I mean, I would just be very honest. Like, I just don't feel it, that you're ready yet to do this interview. Or I would do pre-interviews on the phone always. I mean, that was before you did Zoom interviews and things like that. And I would ask questions. And this is what I tell my clients all the time. It's like, I would ask a question, they wouldn't know the answer, and they wouldn't know how to pivot. They wouldn't know how to kind of work around and get me something else, right? That would make them look savvy. They would just say, "Oh, I don't know. I have to look that up," or something like that. It's like, ugh, would you say that on I can't take that risk if you were to say that during a live segment or something. So I would just say that, I don't think that you're quite there yet, but start doing some local news. I mean, that's where kind of like you can, push around the heft of a national news program, to say maybe go back to local and try some local news first and let's see how that goes. But I tried to be honest as much as possible.
How did you coach somebody? Let's look at the other side of it. How do you coach somebody up now in what you're doing right now in your vocation? Tell me how
Yeah.
you do that with someone you see potential and perhaps they're paying you to coach them up. What is that process? Fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, it is always about finding the things that work, I think, first and seeing what is good. Okay, we're good with this. This sounds good. You did this, you didn't do that. Like these are all good. What can we improve? It's all about, confidence and also being able, I think, to try it, to do this. So many people think like, oh, I'll be fine. Put me on. Let me answer a few questions. I'll be okay. And they go on and they blabber on and on and on. And they're like, maybe I wasn't ready for that. So I think sometimes you have to let people fail a little bit too, to do it, because people sometimes get this false sense of I could do it. And then they try and they actually can't do it, or they would like to work it out a little bit. I mean, I work with people who are brand new authors. I mean, I work with experts and CEOs and everybody, but mostly authors and people who have had tons of books before, but they want to talk about this book in a specific way. And so it's like a new story. It's a new thing that you want to talk about in a different way. And so being able to do that and have somebody to ping pong off of, and I do try to be as honest as possible, but I'm pleasant about it. It's not going to be a mean, awful experience.
And that's an art form, Paula. That's so important because you don't want to deflate their egos, or because they're fragile, right? Some of them, right? They're trying to get into a world where they've never been. They're writing their first book. Perhaps the only speaking they've done is in small meetings. And now they're really in a different environment. So give us a case study. Tell me about somebody who you've really coached and they are just hitting it out of the park and you're proud of them.
Yes, there's a woman, her name is Brandy Doming, and she's an author. Her first book was called The Vegan 8. And her publisher came to me and said, she doesn't want to do video, really. She's a little afraid of doing video for her book launch. And we really wanted her to do video because she has a really big following on, one social media network or whatever it was. And I said to her, why are you so against it? And she said, I don't know. I'm just a little nervous about it. I'm not sure. And I said, well, let's talk about the book a little bit. Right. And so I think sometimes if you can get to the core of why the person is doing this work, it will really help. So she was afraid to be the voice or to be seen, because a lot of times authors, of course, what do? We write and we want people to read the book and enjoy it, and we don't want to have to say anything about it. But so the genesis of the book was that at the time her husband had gout, which is, an awful condition that can be connected to what you eat. And so they were eating a lot of red meat and a lot of things. And so the family was, canceling vacations because he had these awful symptoms and all this stuff. And so she found when she started to cook vegan food and vegan meals that his symptoms would go away. And I said, wouldn't you have loved to know that way before, like when this all first started? And she said, well, yeah, I mean, of course. I said, well, you're the person to do that now. How dare you keep that information from someone else? Like, you could be helping so many people who don't have to go through the road that you went down. You could tell them now. And the way you do that is by telling your story, by going on, by doing these videos. It's a public service. Be of service. How dare you keep it to yourself? And as soon as I said that, it did not become about her. It became about everyone else. And it became about how I could help people, how I could be of public service, how I could, and it really switched. She does videos all the time. She has a second book coming out now. Now she's like, doing her thing, not shy at all. But it really sometimes takes that like mindset switch of taking the spotlight off yourself. It's not about you. It's about the audience, about what can you do to help them.
Was that for you too? Because as a producer, even though you were talking to people all day and you were in high level situations, you weren't on camera. What was your personal transition like? Did you have to have that type of moment where, listen, I'm coaching people, I'm getting them better for the greater good, right? When that's kind of, we touched on this earlier, but that was not your role to be public. Now it was. So how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it was sort of like, hey, if I want people to know what I'm doing, if I want people to trust me and to like, who are the people that I want to hire? The people that I see who are doing the thing that I want to do. So that's why I still pitch myself to media. That's why I still do media. That's why I'm still out there. I mean, it's good to practice when something goes wrong. And then I'm like, okay, great. Well, that's something I can talk about now. That's something new. Not that I want something to go wrong, but when it happens, at least you're able to then use that as a teachable moment to be able to take it back and say,
Paula, I'm going to relate something that I've learned in my career for many years. This NFL player told me this in around 2003. He came into our studio and he was going to do our show, right? Our weekly Raiders show. He said, some players that struggle do not accept their reality. You're a backup center or you're the third tight end. Yeah. That's your reality. You're pushing to get better. But when you accept your reality and you're there for your teammates, right? Taking it away from your pain point and slouching at practice and having bad body language, you're not being a good teammate. He said, what I learned, he's talking about himself now, is that when I accepted my reality, my daily reality, I'm in this meeting, I need to go to the practice and I need to stand over here and be great for these people that coach. So my point to you is this: do you get CEOs or high-level individuals, those folks that listen? You're going to be on camera. That's your reality. In 10 minutes, that camera is going to go on. You need to tell your story in a succinct and impactful manner. Or the CEO, listen, sir, ma'am, you're going to be in front of 50 people. It's not about you. Back to your original point, be of service to these people and communicate this way because that's your reality. Am I going anywhere with this, Paul? Is it
Oh,
resonating
no,
with you?
absolutely, for sure. And I think it's also knowing how far to push people sometimes too, because you
Yes.
can see where they can get to. Like, this is great for, I don't need you to anchor the evening news tonight. Do you know? Like, we need you to just do this part. So this for that for what we need you to do, this is where it's at, right? Like, we've gotten you to that point. But there are people, of course, I mean, the types of people who hire a media trainer, someone who wants to be really good, who wants to be better than good. So I'm working with doctors and lawyers and CEOs and people who are used to being top of the class. So in a way, it's wonderful for me because they do the homework, they care, they take the feedback. They don't think that they're the expert. They know that they're not at this thing. They know they're an expert at what they want to talk about, but they're deferring to my expertise in this area because they know I know this. Those are the best clients ever because they want to be better, but they know their lane. There are some people who think that they're going to, oh, I'm going to be on this show or I'm going to be on that show. And it's unrealistic, right? It happens all the time. I mean, it happened when I was, fielding pitches from people too. They thought they should have their own show, right? And so it's like, whoa, we didn't even have you on for a 2-minute segment yet. Let's back it up, right? So, there are levels to this, of course, but it definitely, when you know what the assignment is, like, what is it that you need to do? Where are you in this, in this, and how far do you need to go? That's really helpful too, so that people see that goal and they're able to really work towards that, right? I don't need you to be the top. I need you to be able to say this sentence, without stuttering. I need you to be able to look in the camera, make sure your outfit looks good, like for 2 minutes.
A lot of people have interviewed you and they ask you about multitasking.
Yeah.
And, in your list, right? Your book is called Listful Thinking, Using Lists to Be More Productive. And so I've watched you and listened to you about, okay, so there's multitasking and people say the negatives of multitasking. But what about phrasing it this way, Paula? The positives of focusing. Back to the point you just made, to focus on the moment, focus on the coaching, focus on getting better. Fair?
Definitely. Yes. I mean, and that's all I've learned in television news, right? You're watching, you're in that control room, something is happening. You can't do anything else. You shouldn't be doing anything else because otherwise that moment will go by and a split second you'll miss it. And you need to be on your game. And it's the same thing when you're doing an interview. When we're talking, when we're here right now, it's like, I'm the only person who could be doing this. So I can't be doing other things at the same time. You really need to be able to focus and channel that focus. It makes a difference.
Tell us about lists. Tell us about where this fits into your coaching and being productive and making sure that folks can get the most out of their days.
It's efficiency, really. I mean, it really goes back to being efficient in the newsroom. I have to say, it's where everything comes from. I mean, it's like if I didn't know all the things that I had to do and I wasn't making that list, it wouldn't get done and I wouldn't have a job. It just wouldn't work. That you can't have that type of job without being very, very detail oriented. And so I started to notice that when I wasn't using lists outside of work, things were falling through the cracks. I wasn't as efficient. I wasn't as good. I was kind of scattered. And I was like, that's not who I am. I don't understand what's going on here. And it was the lists. And when I started looking for an apartment in New York City with my husband, we were like overwhelmed. And I said, you know what? I literally made like a sheet that I would make when I went out on a shoot to go interview somebody. Like, here's all the questions I'm going to ask. These are the shots I need to get. This is what I want to make sure that, how many closets are there? How close is it to the subway? Like all the things I needed to notice in the moment. And I found that that was really helpful to keep me on track. But then I didn't realize other people didn't do things like this. And so a friend of mine had said, that's amazing. And a real estate agent was like, can I have a copy of that list? Because I'm going to give it to all my clients because they need this. And I was like, okay. And my friend who was also a producer, she's like, people don't think like this. They're not making their own, like shoot sheets to go out and do like normal things for themselves. So that's when I realized, okay, there's something here, and that I started a blog. A friend of mine said, start a blog, don't write a book right away. See if you have enough to talk about. If you can write 50 blog posts about this and you're still interested, keep going. I mean, that was like 14 years ago or something like that, and I'm still talking about it. I'm still doing it. 2 books later, I have a second book, Blissful Living, that came out about 5 years ago. And so it's like, it's me though, it's like, I constantly can find a new use for this to be able to help people to be more efficient. And when it comes to television and media training and video and all of these things, how can you be most productive with your time, right? Batching how you do your videos and making sure you have your talking points and what are the 3 key points you're going to, it all comes back to lists really. I don't want people memorizing things. I want to say it succinctly, but to have that list of bullet points. And I think a lot of my clients appreciate that organization, to be able to say, okay, how many videos are you going to do in a week? When are you going to do them? How are you going to do it? Let's make a spreadsheet, so it's like all that TV production background comes back.
My gosh. What happens if you have 25 lists like I do? And everyone who knows me is laughing right now because they know it to be the truth. Paula, what do you do with folks like me who are organized, kind of, but
Right.
in different areas and silos, but bringing it all together for a centralized list?
I just did a TV segment about this actually. And
Ah.
yes, and everyone has an animal type that goes along with their list making. It sounds to me like you're a squirrel. Squirrels like to make a lot of lists and put them on whatever paper they find, and just like they make the list, but it might not actually end up happening. And the thing that has to happen for the squirrel is that they do need to have a central spot to have the list, right? And so but it has to work for you. So like if you're into notebooks or you want to do it digitally, because having all those lists in one central location is really great. But I think also for me, I make a daily list. So it becomes part of my end of the day ritual. And I did this even when I worked in TV. I literally, before I left my desk, I would say, okay, what's up for tomorrow? And you couldn't always tell because who knows what tomorrow will be, but what is my intention for tomorrow? Like, what are the things that if all goes well, this is what I'd like to do? I would do it the night before I left my desk. And then when I got in the morning, I was like, okay, here's my hit list of things I want to do. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, but at least to do that ritual. And even today, as an entrepreneur, it's like I need to make that list as the last thing in my day. So it's my shutdown strategy. I'm not doing any more work after this because otherwise, as an entrepreneur, you can just keep going. So I know when I make that list for the next day, that's the final thing. But, daily lists are helpful. So you may have a bunch of little lists about like, oh, here's an idea about this or here's an idea about that. But reeling it in a little bit and trying that daily list and having one central location might help.
That's great advice. Can I put you on the spot? Are you
Sure.
ready?
I'm
Okay,
ready.
so we've talked about many times your television producing career and how it was perfect. It segued, a nice word for TV.
True.
It segued wonderfully into what you're doing now. What are the top 3 reasons you're a successful entrepreneur?
Oh gosh. Well, 1 is persistence. 2 is organization for sure. And then I think 3 is curiosity. And that comes back to being a television producer, just being curious about things and wanting to know who is the best expert for this thing and then learning from that person. I never think that I know more. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to find the best expert for this story and find out what they know. So then I'll know it and I can do things a little bit differently.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's an early entrepreneur and trying to figure things out and they have 56 notes all around and they're just finding it very difficult to categorize things properly, get organized, whatever
Mhm.
their pain points are? What would you say to an early entrepreneur who's either 20 or 72?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is about focus, right? And being able to take all those things and see what's the theme. Like what keeps coming up again and again? What is the most important part? That'll raise to the top. But sometimes people need accountability, or they need people who, getting a group. Through multiple times in my career, I've had a mastermind group of other people who are at the same level or maybe a little bit higher up than I am, like doing something a little bit more, or, they've done things before, so that you can learn from each other. So, being able to say like, okay, this thing on your list, you're never going to get to that because you didn't do this, or this yet. Right. And having that sort of, know-how is helpful too.
Oh, fantastic. Just fantastic. All right, Paula, here we go. All-star moments. We will get to all-star moments in just a second. To grow as a leader, you must make intentional choices about how you want to show up for yourself and your team. Are you ready to grow your leadership? The Gargano Leadership Group offers expert coaching, consulting, and workshops rooted in our 4 leadership pillars: curiosity, alignment, optimism, and self-awareness. Leadership starts with forging authentic connections, communicating your values, leading with energy and enthusiasm, and truly understanding yourself. Visit garganoleadership.com to get started with us today. Back to the show. Here we go. The best network news show right now is what?
Oh gosh, I love Lester Holt. So the nightly news with Lester Holt.
He came up a few weeks ago. That's awesome. Look at my next one was best network anchor. All right, how about
Lester.
second best?
I answered all the questions at once.
Yes, you did. Okay, best network reporter right now.
Peter Alexander. I really like him.
What is your number one pet peeve of a public communicator?
Oh, someone who's all they do is say thank you from the very beginning. They're wasting their words, and it just drives me insane. And it's like, get to the point. If you had practiced, you wouldn't have to say all those things.
Your favorite morning show, because they compete, that's high level competition. Your favorite morning show?
The Today Show. And I did love Hoda and Jenna, but now, it's different. So that had been my favorite.
Okay. Last one. Describe yourself as a communicator in one sentence.
I think as a communicator, I am equally curious as I am. I don't want to use the word communicate, but communicative. Like, I like to listen as much as I speak. I try to do that.
That was excellent. That's because listening and communicating and writing, they all go hand in hand. They're right there together. Right, Paula?
They should be.
Listen, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been so fun. And I appreciate it. I always appreciate someone who does their homework and, is really great at their craft. So I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for your excellence as well.
And we thank Paula very much for being on the show. I have several takeaways and I will list them for you. Did you get that? Okay. Make lists in your personal life equal to those lists in your professional life. You heard what Paula said. She was apartment hunting in New York City with her husband. She made a list and it went very well. So then she says, here's a way of organizing your lists. Before you go to bed at night, bullet point what you're going to do the next day. And as Paula referenced it, she said, it's her shutdown strategy. Then you don't have to think about it anymore. Here's another takeaway from Paula. I asked her, why are you successful as an entrepreneur? Because she is. And the answer that she gave was 3 categories here: persistence, organization, and curiosity. I thought that was very helpful. Also, finally, she said, if you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to do anything and get to the next level, join a mastermind group for counsel from those people that are a little further ahead than you, or perhaps can share knowledge on a regular basis on things that you are missing, because they're in a mastermind group for a reason. They've been doing it a bit longer. They've seen the pitfalls and are now successful. Hope you enjoyed this podcast, everybody. We'll see you Friday for KTLM Extras and next Tuesday for another great interview. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Keep the Line Moving. Thanks for tuning in to Keep the Line Moving. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Most importantly, share this podcast with your friends, family, and coworkers. It means the world to us. If you have a guest recommendation, visit our website at garganoleadership.com, where you'll also find all our archived episodes. For our marketing coordinator and the producer of this podcast, Savin Narwhal, I'm Chris Gargano. Have a fantastic week, everybody.